An English teacher who couldn't get a job at KFC built a $500 billion empire. Then the Chinese government made him vanish for 3 months. Here's the real story. October 24, 2020, Shanghai, the Bund Finance Summit. Jack Ma is on stage giving a speech. He's China's richest man, worth $50 billion, founder of Alibaba, the Amazon of China. He's supposed to be talking about financial innovation. Instead, he goes off script. He starts criticizing Chinese regulators, calls them outdated, says they're using pawnshop thinking to regulate modern finance, says the government is stifling innovation, that China needs to stop being so risk-averse and start thinking like entrepreneurs. The audience is silent. You can feel the tension. In China, you don't publicly criticize the government, especially not if you're a billionaire, especially not if you're about to launch the biggest IPO in history. See, Jack's company Ant Group, the fintech spin-off of Alibaba, is scheduled to go public in 3 days. It's supposed to raise $37 billion, the largest IPO ever. Jack's personal stake would be worth another $30 billion. He's about to become one of the 5 richest people on Earth. But first, he's got to finish this speech. He keeps going, questions the regulators' competence, suggests they don't understand technology, don't understand the future, and as he's speaking, officials in the audience are taking notes, reporting back to Beijing. Jack finishes his speech, walks off stage, and 48 hours later the Ant Group IPO is cancelled, suspended by regulators. The $37 billion listing is dead, just killed, 2 days before it was supposed to happen. And Jack Ma, he disappears. For 3 months, nobody sees him, no public appearances, no statements. His social media goes dark. People start speculating. Is he in jail? Is he under house arrest? Did the Chinese Communist Party disappear him? When he finally reappears in January 2021, he's different, quieter, more careful. He announces he's stepping back from Alibaba, stepping back from public life. The most visible entrepreneur in China is suddenly invisible. And over the next 2 years, regulators dismantle his empire, force Alibaba to pay a $2.8 billion antitrust fine, the largest in Chinese history, force Ant Group to restructure, cap its growth, cut his stake. Alibaba stock loses $600 billion in value. Jack's personal net worth drops from $50 billion to $25 billion. That speech cost him everything. But here's the thing, Jack Ma spent 20 years building Alibaba from nothing, from an apartment in Hangzhou to a $500 billion empire, from English teacher to richest man in China. And that story, how he built it, why it worked, and how it all came crashing down, that's what we're diving into today. I'm Alex Morgan, this is Behind the Billion, and today we're breaking down Jack Ma, the English teacher who built China's Amazon, became a national hero, then got taken down by his own government. And look, I spent the last 2 weeks deep in research on this, reading every interview Jack ever gave, his biography, books on Alibaba's history, the IPO prospectus, Chinese business analysis, talked to some people who have done business in China. And here's what I found. Jack Ma's story is the most dramatic rise and fall in modern business history, and it tells you everything you need to know about entrepreneurship in China. Everyone knows Alibaba, everyone knows Jack Ma became a billionaire, but what people don't know is how improbable his success was, how many times he failed before Alibaba, how he built a company in an economy where the government controls everything, and how one speech, literally one speech criticizing regulators, destroyed 20 years of work. This is a story about entrepreneurship, sure, but it's also a story about power, about what happens when business gets too big, about the relationship between entrepreneurs and the state in authoritarian systems, and about the limits of success when you don't control the rules. So that's what we're getting into, the full story, the rise, the empire, and the fall. Alright, let me take you back to the beginning. Jack Ma is born September 10, 1964 in Hangzhou, China. And this is critical context. 1964 is in the middle of Mao's Cultural Revolution. China is dirt poor, communist, centrally planned economy, no private business, no entrepreneurship, nothing. If you want to succeed, you become a government official or a teacher or a factory worker. That's it. Jack grows up in this system. His parents are traditional Chinese musicians, performers. They're not wealthy, not connected, just regular people, and Jack's a small kid, thin, scrappy, not particularly good at school. He fails his primary school exams twice, fails his middle school exams twice. He's not a natural student. But he's got one obsession, English. See, Hangzhou is a tourist city. Beautiful, lots of foreign visitors. And young Jack starts hanging around hotels where foreigners stay. He offers to be their tour guide. For free, he just wants to practice English. He's 9 years old and he's walking foreign tourists around Westlake, talking to them in broken English, asking them to teach him phrases. He does this for 9 years, every morning before school, waking up at 5 a.m., riding his bike 40 minutes to the hotel district, finding foreign tourists, practicing English, then going to school. He's obsessed with learning English because he thinks it's his way out, his way to see the world beyond China. But he keeps failing exams. He fails the entrance exam for university, twice. The first time his math score is 1 out of 121. The second time it's 19. He's terrible at math, terrible at test taking, but he's persistent. He applies a third time, finally gets in, gets accepted to Hangzhou Normal University. Not a prestigious school, not even close, but it's a university. He studies English, graduates in 1988 with a degree in English, and he becomes an English teacher, makes $12 a month, teaching at a local university. This is his life. English teacher in Hangzhou, making barely anything, no prospects, no connections, no obvious path to success. But something happens in 1994 that changes everything. Jack's working as a translator for a Chinese company. They need someone who speaks English to help with a business deal, and they send Jack to Seattle. This is his first trip to America. He's 30 years old, and he discovers the internet. Now remember, it's 1994. The internet is brand new. Most people in America barely know about it. In China, nobody knows about it. Jack's in Seattle and someone shows him a computer, shows him how to search for information, and Jack's mind is blown. He searches for beer, gets results from American beer companies, German beer companies, Japanese beer companies. He searches for China. Nothing comes up. No Chinese businesses, no Chinese information. China doesn't exist on the internet. And Jack has this realization: the internet is going to change everything, and China is completely unprepared. Nobody in China knows about this. This is an opportunity. He goes back to China, quits his teaching job, and in 1995 he starts his first internet company. It's called China Pages. The idea is to help Chinese businesses build websites, get them online, connect them to the global economy. Jack has no idea what he's doing. He doesn't know how to code, doesn't understand technology. He's just an English teacher who saw the internet and thought it was important. He raises $20,000 from friends and family, rents a small apartment, and starts cold calling Chinese businesses, trying to convince them they need websites. Nobody understands what he's talking about. What's a website? What's the internet? Why do we need this? But Jack's persistent. He's making hundreds of calls, giving presentations, showing companies this new technology, and slowly he starts getting customers. China Pages operates for a few years. It makes some money, but it's not a huge success. Jack's learning. He's figuring out the internet, figuring out business, but he hasn't found the big idea yet. Then in 1999, everything changes. Jack's been watching what's happening in America. He's seen Amazon, he's seen eBay, he's seen how e-commerce is growing, and he realizes China needs this. China has millions of small manufacturers, factories making everything, but they have no way to reach customers outside China. They're stuck selling through intermediaries, through trading companies, getting terrible margins. What if there was a platform that connected Chinese manufacturers directly to buyers around the world? An online marketplace where a factory in Guangzhou could sell to a retailer in America or Europe. Cut out the middlemen, make it easy. This is the idea for Alibaba. Jack gathers 17 friends in his apartment in Hangzhou. February 1999. They sit on the floor and Jack gives this passionate speech about how the internet is going to change business, how they're going to help small companies compete with big companies, how they're going to make it easy to do business anywhere. His friends are confused, they don't really understand, but they believe in Jack, so they pool their money, $60,000 total, and they start Alibaba. The name comes from the story of Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. The phrase "open sesame" that unlocks treasure. Jack wants Alibaba to be the phrase that unlocks opportunity for small businesses. Now here's what's incredible. Jack doesn't know how to code. Most of his founding team doesn't know how to code. They're learning as they go. They're building a website to connect buyers and sellers, a B2B marketplace, and they're targeting international buyers who want to source products from China. The first version of Alibaba is rough, really rough, but it works. Chinese factories can list their products. Foreign buyers can search and contact them. It's like eBay for wholesale, and it starts getting traction. But there's a problem. Nobody trusts online transactions, especially international ones. How do you know the factory will actually ship the product? How do you know the buyer will actually pay? It's 1999. E-commerce is new. Trust is the biggest barrier. Jack's got to solve this, and he doesn't have money to solve it with technology yet, so he does it with people. Alibaba hires staff to manually verify suppliers, to visit factories, to check that they're real, that they can deliver. They're building trust the hard way, one supplier at a time. And it's working. Slowly, Alibaba starts growing. They're getting thousands of listings. Buyers from around the world are using the platform, but they're not making money. The service is free. They're burning through their initial $60,000. They need more capital. Jack starts pitching investors, and man, he gets rejected a lot. He pitches 30+ venture capital firms. They all say no. They don't understand the business model. They don't think China's ready for e-commerce. They think Jack's crazy, just an English teacher with no tech background trying to build an internet company. But Jack doesn't give up. He's incredibly persistent. And in 1999, he finally convinces someone. Goldman Sachs leads a $5 million investment. Then in 2000, SoftBank, Masayoshi Son's firm, invests $20 million. This is the capital Alibaba needs to scale. Now let me give you context on what's happening in China at this time. It's the late 1990s, early 2000s. China's economy is opening up. The government is allowing more private enterprise, more foreign investment. The internet is starting to arrive, but infrastructure is terrible. Most people don't have computers. Internet is slow and expensive. E-commerce seems like a luxury for the future. But Jack sees something others don't. He sees that China has hundreds of millions of people who will come online over the next decade, and when they do, they'll need a way to buy and sell things. Alibaba is positioning itself to be that platform. But first, they need to survive. 2002 is brutal. The dot-com crash happens. Internet companies are collapsing everywhere. Funding dries up. Alibaba's burning cash. They're not profitable. They need to figure out how to make money before they run out of runway. Jack makes a crucial decision. They're going to start charging, not for listings, those stay free, but for premium memberships. Suppliers can pay to get verified status, to rank higher in search results, to get more exposure. It's like LinkedIn Premium, but for Chinese factories. This works. Suppliers start paying. It's not a lot, maybe $500 $2,000 per year, but there are thousands of suppliers, and this creates revenue. Alibaba becomes profitable in 2002. This is huge. Most internet companies are still losing money. Alibaba's making money. They've figured out a sustainable business model. But Jack's not satisfied with just B2B. He's watching what's happening with consumer e-commerce. Amazon is growing in America. eBay is huge. And Jack thinks China needs this too. Chinese consumers are going to want to buy things online, but who's going to build that platform? There's already a dominant player in China. eBay. They entered the Chinese market. They're investing heavily. They've got brand recognition. They've got technology. Jack's thinking, can we compete with eBay? Most people would say no. eBay is massive, well-funded, experienced. How is Alibaba, a small Chinese company focused on B2B, going to compete? But Jack sees an opportunity. eBay charges fees. Every listing costs money. Every transaction takes a percentage. This makes sense in America where people trust online payments. But in China, trust is still the biggest issue. Charging fees makes it worse. You're asking people to pay to use a platform they don't trust yet. Jack has a different idea. What if the platform was free? No listing fees, no transaction fees, completely free for buyers and sellers. Just focus on building the network, building trust, worry about monetization later. This is crazy, this is burning money, but Jack believes in it. So in 2003, Alibaba launches Taobao. It's a consumer-to-consumer marketplace, like eBay, but free, completely free. And they go to war with eBay. eBay is spending millions on marketing in China. TV ads, billboards, they're trying to dominate. Taobao has way less money, but they're scrappier, they're innovating. One big innovation, Alipay. This is the trust solution. See, in China, people don't trust online payments. What if the seller takes your money and doesn't ship? What if the product is fake? Taobao creates Alipay as an escrow service. The buyer pays into Alipay. Alipay holds the money. When the product arrives and the buyer confirms it's good, Alipay releases the money to the seller. This solves the trust problem brilliantly. eBay doesn't have this. They're using PayPal, which doesn't work well in China. Taobao has a better product for the Chinese market, and it's free, and it's local. They understand Chinese consumers better. By 2006, Taobao has overtaken eBay in China. eBay gives up and exits the Chinese market. This is a massive victory. David beat Goliath. A small Chinese startup beat the global leader. And now Taobao is dominant. It's the place to buy and sell in China. Millions of users, billions of transactions, but still free, still not making money. Investors are nervous. Jack, when are you going to monetize? Jack says, not yet. We're building the network. The money will come. And he's right. In 2007-2008, Alibaba starts monetizing Taobao, not through transaction fees, those stay free, but through advertising. Sellers can pay to promote their products, to rank higher in search, just like Google Ads but for e-commerce. This creates enormous revenue. Suddenly, Taobao is printing money. Let me give you numbers. By 2010, Taobao has more transactions than Amazon and eBay combined. More. It's the largest e-commerce platform on earth by volume, and Alibaba, the parent company, is worth billions. But Jack's not done. He sees another opportunity. Taobao is consumer to consumer. Small sellers, individual merchants. But what about brands? What about big companies that want to sell online? They don't want to be on a platform with thousands of small sellers. They want their own storefront, premium experience, brand control. So in 2008, Alibaba launches Tmall. It's a B2C platform. Only authorized retailers and brands can sell there. Apple, Nike, L'Oreal. If you're a major brand and you want to sell in China, you go on Tmall. It's like the premium version of Taobao. And this works. Brands love it. Chinese consumers love it because they can trust they're getting authentic products. Tmall grows fast, and now Alibaba has both ends of the market. C2C with Taobao, B2C with Tmall, plus the original B2B platform for manufacturers. They're dominating Chinese e-commerce, completely dominating. Let me talk about Alibaba's business model, because it's different from Amazon and it's important to understand. Amazon is a retailer. They buy inventory, store it in warehouses, ship it to you. They control the whole process. This requires massive capital, warehouses, trucks, employees. It's asset heavy. Alibaba is a platform. They don't buy inventory, don't own warehouses, don't ship products. They just connect buyers and sellers like eBay. But they make money through advertising, premium memberships, and financial services. It's asset light, incredibly profitable. Margins are 30–40%, way higher than Amazon's 5–10%. This is genius. Alibaba scaled faster because they didn't need to build physical infrastructure. They just needed software and trust. And once they had the network effects, millions of buyers and sellers, they became impossible to compete with. By 2014, Alibaba is ready to go public, and they choose the New York Stock Exchange, not Hong Kong, not Shanghai, New York. Jack wants to make a statement. Chinese companies can compete globally. They're going to list in the heart of American capitalism. September 19, 2014. Alibaba's IPO. They raised $25 billion, the largest IPO in history at that time. The stock opens and soars. Alibaba is valued at over $200 billion on day one. Jack Ma's personal stake is worth $25 billion. He's one of the richest people in China, a national hero. And Jack is loving it. He's giving speeches, becoming a celebrity. He's charismatic, funny, self-deprecating. He tells stories about being rejected from KFC, about failing his exams, about starting with nothing. He's the Chinese dream personified, proof that anyone can make it if they work hard and think differently. But here's where the story gets complicated. As Alibaba grows bigger, Jack becomes more powerful, too powerful. He's got 800 million users on his platforms. He's got their data, their payment information, their buying habits. He knows more about Chinese consumers than the government does. This makes the Chinese Communist Party nervous. And then there's Ant Group. Remember Alipay, the payment service that solved the trust problem for Taobao? It became its own thing. It became the dominant payment system in China, not just for e-commerce, for everything. You can pay for taxis, restaurants, utilities, everything with Alipay. It's like if PayPal, Venmo, and your bank all merged into one app, and everyone in China uses it. Ant Group, the parent company of Alipay, also does lending. They give loans to consumers and small businesses. They have wealth management products. They're essentially a bank, but they're not regulated like a bank. They don't have to hold the same reserves, don't have to follow the same rules. They're a tech company, not a financial institution. At least, that's what Jack argues. By 2020, Ant Group is valued at $300 billion, more than any bank in the world, and Jack's planning to take it public. The IPO is scheduled for November 2020. It's going to raise $37 billion, the biggest IPO ever. Jack's personal stake is worth another $30 billion. This would make him one of the 5 richest people on Earth. But there's a problem. Regulators are getting worried. Ant Group is doing financial services without financial regulation. They're lending money without holding sufficient reserves. If something goes wrong, if loans default at scale, Ant Group can't cover them. Taxpayers would have to. It's systemic risk. And Jack doesn't take this seriously. He thinks regulators are old-fashioned, don't understand technology, don't understand innovation. So on October 24, 2020, at the Bund Finance Summit, Jack gives that speech, the one where he criticizes regulators, calls them outdated, says they're using pawnshop thinking, that they're stifling innovation. This is a massive miscalculation. In China, you don't publicly criticize the government, especially not if you're a billionaire, especially not if you're about to do the biggest IPO in history. The Communist Party sees this as arrogance, disrespect, a billionaire thinking he's above the rules. And they respond swiftly. November 3, 2020, 2 days before the IPO, regulators summoned Jack and Ant Group executives for a meeting. The next day, they announced new regulations for fintech companies. Regulations that specifically target Ant Group's business model, and they suspend the IPO, just kill it, $37 billion gone. Then Jack disappears. For 3 months, nobody sees him, no public appearances, no statements, his social media accounts go silent. People speculate he's been arrested, detained, re-educated. The rumors are wild. When he finally reappears in January 2021, he's changed. In a video call with teachers Jack funds education programs, he looks tired, subdued. He talks about philanthropy, about stepping back, about focusing on education. He doesn't mention Alibaba, doesn't mention Ant Group. He's clearly been told to be quiet. And over the next 2 years, regulators dismantle his empire. April 2021, Alibaba is fined $2.8 billion for antitrust violations, the largest antitrust fine in Chinese history. They're accused of forcing merchants to choose between Alibaba's platforms and competitors. Pick one of two policy, it's anti-competitive. Ant Group is forced to restructure, to operate as a financial holding company with full banking regulation. Their lending has to be scaled back. Growth is capped. The valuation collapses from $300 billion to maybe $70 billion. Alibaba's stock crashes from $300 plus per share to under $100. The company loses over $600 billion in market value. Jack's personal net worth drops from $50 billion to $25 billion. And Jack, he basically disappears from public life. He's supposedly traveling, teaching, philanthropy, but he's no longer the face of Alibaba, no longer giving speeches, no longer visible. The most famous entrepreneur in China is gone. So what happened? Why did the Chinese government turn on Jack Ma? Here's my read based on everything I've researched. First, power. Jack became too powerful. Alibaba touches 800+ million Chinese consumers. Ant Group handles trillions in transactions. Jack had more data on Chinese citizens than the government did. He had more influence over the economy than some government ministries. This is threatening to an authoritarian regime. They can't have a private citizen with that much power. Second, systemic risk. Ant Group really was creating financial risk. They were lending hundreds of billions without adequate reserves. If the economy turned, if loans defaulted at scale, Ant couldn't cover it. The government would have to bail them out. This is legitimate regulatory concern. Third example, other Chinese tech billionaires were watching Jack. If Jack could criticize the government and get away with it, others might too. The party needed to send a message: nobody is above the system. No matter how rich, no matter how successful, the party is in charge. Fourth, ideology. Xi Jinping's government is more left-wing than previous administrations. They're pushing common prosperity, reducing inequality, reigning in big business. Tech billionaires represent capitalism, inequality, power concentration. They're ideologically opposed to what Xi wants for China. So Jack got taken down, not arrested, not killed, just diminished. His companies still exist, he's still wealthy, but he's no longer powerful, no longer visible. The government broke him without destroying him. It's a very Chinese approach to power. Now let me talk about what we can learn from Jack Ma's story, because there are lessons here about entrepreneurship, about China, about risk. Lesson 1. Solve local problems with local solutions. Jack didn't copy eBay, he understood that Chinese consumers needed different solutions. Free listings, escrow payments, trust mechanisms, he built for China, not for global best practices. This is why he won. Lesson 2. Network effects are the ultimate moat. Once Alibaba had millions of buyers and sellers, it became nearly impossible to compete with. New entrants couldn't get enough liquidity on both sides. The network was the moat. Lesson 3. Be willing to lose money to build the network. Taobao was free for years. This was intentional. Jack was building the network first, monetization second. Once you have the network, monetization is easy. Lesson 4. Platform businesses scale faster than retail. Alibaba didn't need to build warehouses or buy inventory. They just connected buyers and sellers. This let them scale to millions of transactions without the capital requirements of Amazon. Lesson 5. In authoritarian systems, political risk is existential. Jack built a $500 billion company, but one speech, literally one speech, got him taken down. In China, you operate at the pleasure of the Communist Party. No matter how successful you are, this is the risk of building in non-democratic systems. Lesson 6. Hubris kills. Jack got arrogant. He thought he was untouchable, thought he could criticize regulators publicly. This was a fatal miscalculation. Stay humble, stay under the radar, especially when you're dealing with governments. Lesson 7. Financial innovation without regulation is dangerous. Ant Group was creating real systemic risk. Regulators had legitimate concerns. Jack dismissed them as outdated, but they were right. Financial regulation exists for a reason. Lesson 8. Build for the long term. Jack spent years building Alibaba before monetizing. He reinvested profits into new platforms, Tmall, Ant Group, cloud computing. He was building an ecosystem, not optimizing for short-term gains. Lesson 9. Distribution is everything. Alibaba controlled distribution in China. If you wanted to reach Chinese consumers, you went through Alibaba. This is enormous power. Control distribution and you control the market. Lesson 10. Know when to exit. Jack should have stepped back earlier, sold some stock, reduced his profile. Instead, he stayed visible, kept control, became a target. Sometimes the smartest move is to cash out and disappear. Let me talk about Alibaba's impact on China, because it's enormous. Before Alibaba, most Chinese goods were sold offline, in physical stores, or exported through trading companies. Small manufacturers had no way to reach consumers directly. They were stuck with middlemen taking most of the profit. Alibaba changed this. Suddenly, a factory in rural China could sell directly to consumers in Beijing or Shanghai, or to buyers in America. They could build a brand, control their pricing, keep more profit. This empowered millions of small businesses. Alibaba also created jobs, millions of them, not just employees. Alibaba has 250,000 plus employees, but all the sellers on the platform, all the delivery drivers, all the support services. Estimates are that Alibaba's ecosystem supports 40 plus million jobs in China. And it changed consumer behavior. Before Alibaba, Chinese consumers bought from local stores, limited selection, high prices. After Alibaba, they could buy anything, from anywhere. Prices dropped, quality improved, competition increased. Chinese consumers are the big winners. But Alibaba also concentrated power. E-commerce in China is dominated by a few platforms. Alibaba, JD.com, Pinduoduo. If you're a seller, you have to be on these platforms. They control access to consumers. They set the fees. They set the rules. This is why regulators crack down. Too much power in too few hands. Now let me talk about Jack Ma's management style, because it's interesting and unconventional. Jack is not a micromanager. He's not technical. He can't code. He doesn't understand the intricacies of technology, but he's a visionary. He sets direction. He builds culture. He attracts talent. Jack's big on culture. Alibaba has a very distinct culture. It's almost cult-like. They have values: customer first, teamwork, embrace change, integrity, passion. Every employee has to live these values. They're evaluated on them, promoted based on them. Jack also does weird stuff to build culture. Alibaba has annual parties where Jack dresses up. He's performed as Snow White, as a punk rocker. He makes these elaborate videos. It's bizarre, but it works. It makes employees feel like they're part of something special, different from other companies. And Jack is a master storyteller. He's constantly telling stories about Alibaba's mission, about helping small businesses, about opening opportunity, about David beating Goliath. These stories motivate people. They give meaning to the work. But Jack's also ruthless about performance. If you don't deliver, you're out. Alibaba's turnover is high. The culture is intense. Long hours, high expectations. Not everyone survives, but the people who do, they're true believers. They'd run through walls for the company. This combination, strong culture, clear mission, performance orientation, is why Alibaba scaled so effectively. It's not just the technology, it's the people and the culture. Let me talk about Jack's personal life, because it's relevant to understanding his downfall. Jack married his college sweetheart. They have 2 kids. He's relatively private about his family, doesn't flaunt wealth, lives in Hangzhou, not Beijing or Shanghai, drives a regular car. This is part of his everyman image, the English teacher who made it big but stayed humble. But after he became super wealthy, Jack changed. He started hanging out with celebrities, doing Tai Chi demonstrations, giving TED Talks, acting in kung fu movies. Seriously, he appeared in a short film with Jet Li. He was enjoying being famous, being powerful. And this visibility became a problem. In China, the wealthiest people stay low-key. They don't flaunt, they don't become celebrities, because that attracts attention from the government, and government attention is dangerous. Jack didn't get this, or he got it but didn't care. He thought he was special, untouchable, a national hero. The government wouldn't dare touch him. Wrong. The Chinese system doesn't care how successful you are. If you threaten stability or power, you get dealt with. Jack found this out the hard way. Now let me talk about where things stand today. Alibaba still exists. It's still massive, still one of the largest e-commerce companies on earth, but its growth has slowed. Regulation has increased. The stock is way down from its peak, and Jack is gone from leadership. Jack Ma himself is mostly out of public view. He's supposedly living between Hong Kong and Tokyo, traveling, working on education, philanthropy. He's given interviews saying he wants to focus on teaching and farming. That business is behind him. But nobody really knows. Some people think he's been told to stay quiet, that he's under some form of house arrest or surveillance. Others think he genuinely wants to step back, that the stress of the government crackdown broke him, that he's done fighting. Either way, the most visible entrepreneur in China is now invisible. And that sends a message to every other entrepreneur in China. Don't get too big, don't get too visible, don't challenge the party. No matter how successful you are, the government can destroy you overnight. This is the reality of building in China. You can create enormous value, you can become wealthy, but you can never become more powerful than the state. The moment you do, you're done. Let me talk about Alibaba's competition, because understanding this helps you see the full picture. Alibaba dominated for years, but competition has emerged. JD.com is strong in logistics. They own warehouses, do fast delivery. They're like Amazon in that respect. They compete directly with Alibaba on electronics and appliances. Pinduoduo is the discount platform, super cheap prices, group buying. They target lower-income consumers. Rural areas, they grew incredibly fast from nothing to hundreds of millions of users in 5 years. They took share from Alibaba in the value segment. And then there's ByteDance, the company behind TikTok. They're moving into e-commerce. Douyin, Chinese TikTok, lets you buy products directly in the app. Social commerce. This is a threat to Alibaba because it changes how people discover products. So Alibaba's not the monopoly it once was. Competition is real. And with regulatory pressure limiting their ability to leverage their dominance, they're vulnerable. This is another reason the government cracked down. They don't want any one company dominating. They want competition. Easier to control multiple companies than one supergiant. Let me talk about what Jack Ma represented to China. In the 2000s and 2010s, Jack was a symbol. He represented the Chinese dream, the idea that anyone could succeed with hard work and smarts. It didn't matter that you weren't born in Beijing, weren't connected to the party, didn't go to elite schools, you could still build something enormous. This was powerful, inspirational. Millions of young Chinese people looked at Jack and thought, I can do that too. This drove entrepreneurship, risk-taking, innovation. But by 2020, the narrative had shifted. Now Jack represented inequality, concentrated wealth, a billionaire who thought he was above the rules. The government wanted to signal that the era of winner-take-all capitalism was over, that common prosperity, more equal distribution of wealth was the new priority. Jack became the example, the cautionary tale. See what happens when you get too big. When you challenge the system, you get cut down, no matter who you are. This is about control. The Chinese Communist Party needs to be the most powerful entity in China. Always, if anyone, individual or company threatens that, they get dealt with. This is how authoritarian systems maintain power. Now let me bring this to modern context. What does Jack Ma's story tell us about China today? First, the regulatory environment has completely changed. For years, Chinese tech companies operated with minimal oversight. They could grow fast, break things, ignore rules. That era is over. Now regulators are aggressive. They're breaking up monopolies, limiting growth, forcing compliance. If you're building in China, you need to assume heavy regulation. Second, the government will always prioritize control over growth. If your company gets big enough to threaten social stability or party control, you're at risk. Doesn't matter how valuable you are. Doesn't matter how many jobs you create. Control is more important than economics. Third, wealth is fine, but power is dangerous. You can get rich in China. The government is fine with that, but you can't become powerful. You can't have influence that rivals the state. Stay in your lane, make money, but don't think you can shape policy or challenge authority. Fourth, exit timing matters. If you're a founder in China and you succeed big, sell early. Get liquid, reduce your stake, lower your profile, don't stay front and center, because the bigger you get, the bigger the target on your back. Fifth, China is moving left economically. Xi Jinping's government is more socialist than previous administrations. They're redistributing wealth, limiting tech companies, strengthening state enterprises. If you're betting on China becoming more capitalist, you're betting wrong. These are the lessons for entrepreneurs, investors, and anyone trying to understand China. Jack Ma's story is not just about one man, it's about the relationship between business and state in China, and right now, the state is winning. Let me wrap up by talking about Jack's legacy. Despite everything, Jack Ma changed China. Alibaba transformed Chinese commerce, made it easier for small businesses to reach customers, made shopping better for consumers, created millions of jobs, built infrastructure, payment systems, logistics, cloud computing that will last for decades. Jack also inspired a generation. He showed that success was possible without connections, without elite credentials, just with vision, persistence, and execution. Thousands of Chinese entrepreneurs cite Jack as their inspiration. But Jack also learned the limits of success in an authoritarian system. You can build something enormous. You can become wealthy beyond imagination, but you can never be more powerful than the state. And if you forget that, if you get arrogant, if you challenge authority, you'll be destroyed. This is the tragedy of Jack Ma. He built one of the great companies of the modern era, and then lost control of it, not to competitors, not to markets, but to his own government, because he spoke too freely, because he criticized the wrong people, because he forgot the rules. It's a story about power, about the fragility of success in systems where the government controls everything, and about the price of hubris. Jack Ma is 59 years old now. He's worth $25 billion, still incredibly wealthy, but he's been neutered. His empire is under government control. His influence is gone. He's become irrelevant. And that's exactly what the Chinese government wanted. Alright, so that's the story of Jack Ma. That's how an English teacher making $12 a month built China's Amazon. That's how he became a billionaire, a national hero, and then got taken down by his own government for one speech criticizing regulators. That's the rise and fall of the most dramatic business story in modern China. The framework is powerful but dangerous. Build for your market, not for global best practices. Create network effects. Give away the product to build the network, monetize later. But if you're building in an authoritarian system, never forget who's really in charge. Stay humble, stay quiet, never challenge the state, because the moment you do, everything you built can be taken away. If this kind of deep research into how billion-dollar empires rise and fall resonates with you, if you want the real story with all the political context and power dynamics that shape the outcome, hit subscribe. New episode every single day. Tomorrow's another founder, another empire, another set of lessons on what it really takes to build at scale. I'm Alex Morgan. Thanks for listening to Behind the Billion.